So guys, let's talk about, was the ban list enough? I mean, a lot of players might say it was overkill to some decks, some players might not, but we know what the ban list has done for the format, and we're going to take a look at both JP and English side if this was enough for the results we wanted. So without further ado, let's dive in the video and talk about it. So a quick refresher on what was hit over the course. Promo Ukus, Louis, Hammer Spark, Awakening the Golden Knight, Numemon X, TKs, and then the unrestriction of Goblimon. So taking this into account that we know how many cards got hit, which was a massive purge of a lot of powerful decks and a rebalancing of the scale, to be honest with you. So taking that into account, if we look at it now, let's take a look at JP. We're going from the first because the 31st is kind of always wonky. I mean, for data wise, we could just go to the 31st of when the ban list took place, but let's take a look here. First off, Purple Hybrid has been taking the lead a little bit in this format because of the change up. Now this deck has a little bit more room to breathe. And then Fenry Luga, this one is, I think this is Takamazuchi, right? Let's take a look here before I speak and be an idiot as you guys make fun of me. Yep, this is Takamazuchi. So major decks that kind of came up in the forefront are more or less, two major ones are decks that OTK a little bit more consistently. They are competitively viable. I mean, they've always been, but now with, let's say, Purple Hybrid kind of leading the front, Takamazuchi takes the advantage of that because it wants to mill. So any deck that kind of gives a free mill is really powerful. Purple Hybrid wasn't doing too well. They had to use Mother to kind of blockade a little bit for your opponent's strategy because of the Ukumon rush that just would outpace you if you didn't see the right combination. So your first turns usually was hatch Mother, slam down Shoto, or hope to dig close enough to Shoto to be able to activate it for your first couple turns. Now it kind of definitely opened up. You definitely see that even right now they have Mother in the list. They stuck it in a little bit. Some lists don't even play Mother. Some lists are hyper focused on it. Just things like this is very vitally important to understand when it comes down to deck building. And right now, a lot of players are opting, even for purple right now, they moved into Ukumons, and it's not a problem because a lot of decks also definitely started taking out Digimon Emperor from their list to slow down, because a lot of players now, just because of the repetitions on enough Emperors, are most likely doing Rookie, Digivolving the Champion, because if you open up Emperor and slam down, they're now stalled out a turn after you've Digivolved, means you get an extra turn of doing something while they're trying to struggle to get back in. So keeping that in mind, they're like this concept here. 914, this is the blocker base version where they use Mother and Shoto to kind of build a wall, and then they just do their combination with their Purple Hybrid shenanigans. So making multiple colors to help mill you out a little bit, a more fair Apocalypse style strat. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, that's why Fenry Luga is taking advantage of it. You have Red Green Imperial Digimon, Red Hybrid, Ancient Gurumon, Yellow Vaccine, 7 Great Demon Lords, Lucimon actually appearing more consistently because now the formats, instead of being that hyper aggro that they had to deal with multiple lines, it sped down just enough for it to do it. But we also noticed that there was a massive uptick in Mirage Galgas, which probably should have went with it, but two major events and they took first and second. I'm not surprised, but at the end of the day, you have a lot to take into consideration, and information like this is vital strats. So taking that into account, there was only one Numemon to survive, and then everybody was off of it. Just because once a deck kind of gets hit, nobody really kind of engineers and tries to redesign. And even this list kind of is clunky. I mean, a lot of players were going to say, well, you hit the wrong card. You need to hit Mumsymon X. I was like, even with my things, I'm like, if you hit Numemon X, I think hitting Uku's and Louis was just enough to make the deck still competitively playable, and you would have been able to see the format evolve. Taking Louis, Uku, and Numemon X out of the deck was 3 giant hits for this deck, and it became a lot slower in comparison to its original form. Yeah, it was probably at a 11, and now it brought it down to like a 7 with all these pieces now hit on them, and the balancing of the deck really definitely phased it out, which makes a lot of sense at the end of the day. We're expecting that. And we kind of expect other decks to kind of just take the place and be a little bit faster. I mean, even Red Hybrid is doing its shenanigans a lot better now. I mean, let's be straight, the deck is very good. You have like Ancient Guru still being competitively viable, even with the hits. It lost a little bit, but it compensated with pieces to make sense to make it keep going. I mean, at the end of the day, the format definitely opened up a lot better. You can see it in results and everything like that. And even taking into our meta, let's take a look here. Excuse me. So taking a look here, the most recent events. You have Homeland Spain Online Regionals and Dexteruga, Ancient Garurumon, Ancient Garurumon, Ancient Garurumon. Wasn't enough to actually knock Ancient Garurumon out, but you definitely see that Imperial Dramon isn't as dominant as it was in the beginning, because that's vitally important to take a look at. Let's see. Imperial Dramon on its first 1.75 Carta Magical Regionals in Niagara had a whopping high playstyle. That's no surprise there. A lot of players just swapped over to Imperial Dramon after their Numemon deck kind of got hit. So it makes a lot of sense here. Then you had Europe, France, where Imperial Dramon definitely moved down a little bit. And so has one of the bigger contenders in people's fears was the yellow vaccine deck. And it's definitely come down a lot too, in a sense that a lot of it is blue base, blue base Magna X instead. A lot of them keep calling it yellow vaccine. I hate that they don't call it just what it is, truly yellow armor, and it's not really yellow vaccine at the end of the day. Yes, you use the vaccine bottom ends and stuff like that, but it's not that. And then you have other events like larger, at the end of the day, taking a look here, we see a lot of diversity coming into the format. I mean, taking a look here, even just with the Spain Online Regionals, as I mentioned here, this is the most recent one. Ancient Garurumon definitely took up a lot of slots this time, 5, similar to its counterpart Imperial Dramon, because Ancient Garurumon is still a great deck. A lot of players know how to pilot it, and people are getting better and better with the list. So keeping this in mind when it comes down to like Ancient Garurumon, Imperial Dramon, Omnimon Ace, Magnamon X, Dexterugamon, Purple Base, and all this other good stuff, you have to take into account all this data is showing that a progression of the format is coming. And like I mentioned even before, I loved taking the data from Eagle Nest September. Even though they had 5 rounds, it definitely showed a very much healthier meta with 35 players is kind of pretty solid. You have Mother Control, Omnimon Ace, Imperial Dramon, you have Ancient Greymon, Dexteruga, Imperial Dramon, Mirage, Dexteruga, all great decks that kind of come into the fray. I mean, Mirage Galaxy is no surprise. It is a very powerful deck. Dexteruga is very powerful as well. And we're getting closer to where the format was, where it started doing quite well into it. Do I think it's going to survive going forwards? We'll have to see. I think the deck is very powerful. Don't get me wrong. A lot of great plays can be done with it. But at the end of the day, probably will start phasing out a little bit once we get to once we get closer to unification. The deck is strong. It just depends on the meta's call, and it takes very good piloting with it. It is a what Mugen-esque kind of style of play where you have to do right calls. You get punished if you make the wrong call, and if you don't do it at the right time, you're going to be struggling the whole match. And information like this is vital, especially even like Mirage Galaxy, which is basically just fishy boys and stuff like that. I mean, being able to have Hexablau, Mirage Galga in it, and then you have Apollomon kind of applying pressure that way is vitally important. I mean, at the end of the day, Dexteruga has a lot of potential, especially black base and purple base. They both can do quite well into this format and will do well coming into this format. So just keeping this in mind, how you want to build your decks. I mean, the biggest contender that's coming into the fray is definitely going to be Mother D Reaper. And with players playing this deck, you just have to know what you're doing. Again, another very much rewarding style of play. Do I think Mother Control is going to do well enough into way bigger events? Probably not. I feel like it does suffer from its biggest disadvantage point, and that is that it creates ties more often than losses. And if that happens, especially going into events and times, Mother Control doesn't do well if it gets too many ties. You kind of just start losing your momentum. It's a deck that annoys players at the local level, and it's going to stay at that level, but I think that is where it kind of just hurts itself, is that Black Mother Control is a reliant deck on your opponent having something on the board to apply pressure. Yeah, you get a bunch of mothers, but if your opponent can get over Mother consistently enough, you're going to have a bad time. So stuff like this does happen where data is important taking control into a control setting. And knowing that, especially this coming weekend, I definitely expect something similar to Eagle Nesses here, but similar to here, we're going to see, you know, 7 Great Demon Lords coming up. Imperial Dramon might tick down a lot more. Ancient Garu might tick down just a little bit more because, like, even in the counterpart of JP, it definitely isn't doing as well as it started out with. You know, if I go to the 30th and then we move it to there, let's see, what, June 6th. Let's look that up. Let's take that into a look. Ancient Garurumon Purple Hybrid, 7 Great Demon Lords, kind of just the big boys of the format. Numemon trailing up, Blue Green Imperial Dramon. So stuff like that. Even Black Hybrid took a little bit to get there. I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to be a lot changing up, and I think all in all, Numemon definitely died for its sins. It is gone. It's not coming back. Then you have decks similar to Imperial Dramon, definitely moved up and definitely did well. The Gabubon deck definitely died. It never had a shot once those hits came into place. And then you have a lot of other decks that kind of just now exist, and they kind of became fair and balanced once you hit the bigger threats of their decks. So at the end of the day, I think all in all, Numemon definitely overkilled. It disappeared out of the format completely from all sides. Ancient Garu's got a slap on the wrist, which is fine. The Gabubon deck definitely got neutered and disappeared and never really had a chance for us. And that's kind of all in all, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you next one. Peace.